8. Rachel Wade. In 2009, a young Florida man named Josh Camacho got more than he bargained for when he got involved with 2 women at the same time. He already had a past with 18-year-old Rachel Wade and allegedly continued seeing her on and off even after he started dating 18-year-old Sarah Ludman. The 2 women eventually found out about each other and a heated months-long rivalry ensued. They exchanged vile text messages, harassed one another online, exchanged threatening phone calls, and even swapped harsh words in public. Tensions reached a breaking point in early 2010 when Rachel showed up at Camacho's house while Ludman was there. Later that night, Sarah decided it was time to settle things face to face. She drove to a mutual friend's home in Pinellas Park where Wade was hanging out, and while there are conflicting versions of what happened when she arrived, the encounter undeniably turned violent. It ended with Wade stabbing Ludman in the shoulder and chest, puncturing her heart. Tragically, the young woman died from her injuries. Police charged Wade with murder. She argued in court that Ludman had charged at her with fists flying and that she stabbed the young woman in self-defense. But witnesses told a much different story, claiming that Wade attacked Ludman before she even had a chance to exit her vehicle. When the stabbing was over, she allegedly tossed the knife into a neighbor's yard and calmly walked away. Wade was convicted of second-degree murder and received a 27-year prison sentence. 7. Clara Harris. Clara Suarez immigrated to the United States from Colombia during the 1980s and became a dentist. In 1992, she married an orthodontist named David Harris. They went into business together and ran a chain of successful dental offices, which afforded them an upscale lifestyle. By the time they became parents to twin boys 6 years into the marriage, Clara had formed a close bond with Harris's daughter from a previous marriage. But the couple's seemingly picture-perfect life fell apart in 2002 when one of their employees suspected David of having an affair with his receptionist, Gail Bridges, and told Clara. David admitted to the affair and told Clara that he would end it if she made certain changes to her appearance and dedicated more time to him and their household. She quit her job, started putting more effort into her looks, and catered to David at the dinner table and in bed. When she began to suspect that her husband had failed to end his affair as promised, Clara hired a private investigator to look into his whereabouts. She soon received a call that David was with his mistress at the same hotel where he and Clara had gotten married 10 years earlier. Clara drove there with her 16-year-old stepdaughter in tow and viciously confronted David and Gail in the hotel lobby. She slapped Gail and ripped her shirt off while her stepdaughter hit her father and told him she hated him. Instead of trying to explain himself to his family, David showed more concern for Gail and protectively walked her out into the parking lot. Blinded by rage, Harris got into her car and smashed it right into David before backing up over him and allegedly running him over 2 more times after that. At her murder trial, Clara's lawyers argued that she acted under sudden passion and that she only ran David over once, while prosecutors claimed that the murder was premeditated and deliberate. The jury convicted Clara of murder, but agreed with the defense's sudden passion argument, which carries a lesser penalty. She was sentenced to 20 years and was released on parole in 2018 after serving 15 years. 6. Lisa Brown. Former Buffalo Bills tight end Buster Barnett probably never expected to make any major headlines again after his 4-season career with the team ended in 1984. But his name reappeared in the news more than 30 years later in 2015, when his former mistress kidnapped his wife. On the morning of July 15th, 46-year-old Lisa Brown showed up at Barnett's workplace in Clayton County, Georgia, jealous and upset that he planned to take a trip to Las Vegas with his wife, 50-year-old Sandra Barnett. She then went to the couple's home and kidnapped Sandra, who was on the phone with her close friend Ruby Chester when she answered the door. Chester later told the Associated Press that she could hear the visitor threatening to kill Sandra if she didn't open the door. Sandra didn't know who it was, but suspected that the woman was Buster's former mistress. She had endured years of harassment from Brown after finding out about the affair and fighting to save her marriage, according to Chester. After failing to reach the correct police department, Chester called a mutual friend and asked him to check on Sandra. He saw a suspicious vehicle in the driveway and wrote the plate number down, then pulled over on a nearby street corner and called 911. Before police arrived, the SUV sped past. Law enforcement issued a statewide advisory to be on the lookout for Brown's vehicle, which was spotted the next morning in western Georgia. Brown pulled over after a brief chase, but before police could approach, she fatally shot Sandra and then took her own life. 5. Shawna Nelson. Ignacio Garral started cheating on his wife Heather in 2004, more than 10 years into their marriage. At first, it was easy to keep the affair a secret. The Greeley, Colorado police officer often worked overnights, and his married mistress Shawna Nelson was a 911 dispatcher at his workplace, making it easy for the couple to slip away unnoticed by their families. Garrels mistakenly believed that Nelson, who was married to a local sheriff's deputy, wanted a strictly physical fling. So he assumed that she would never have a reason or desire to interfere with his marriage. Little did he know Nelson had a reputation for her frequent extramarital affairs and for wanting to keep her paramours all to herself. In 2005, Shawna became pregnant with Ignacio's baby. Her husband Ken knew that the baby wasn't his, but he wanted to save the marriage. In the meantime, Shawna pressed Garrels to continue seeing her by threatening to tell Heather about their relationship if he denied her. She also started routinely stalking and harassing Heather in public. Ignacio grew tired of feeling trapped in the affair, so he took away Shawna's ammo by coming clean to Heather in 2006. Heather agreed to work on the marriage as long as he ended things for good with Shawna. He kept his word and also signed away his rights to his 6-month-old son. Not long after that, a masked assailant approached Heather in her work parking lot and commanded her at gunpoint to get on her knees before firing 2 bullets into her head. Suspicion immediately turned toward Nelson, who was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. To this day, she continues to say that she was framed. 4. Robert Hall. Ashley Corrigan was pregnant with her 5th child in 2010 when her husband Emmett began cheating on her with 40-year-old Candy Hall, a paralegal who worked at his legal firm in Idaho. As a lawyer, Emmett already worked long hours to begin with. But the affair kept him out of the house even more, and when Ashley confronted him, he said he was simply working hard to provide for the family. That very evening, Candy's husband Rob told her he'd reached his breaking point with her growing absence from their marriage. Later that night, Candy and Emmett met up at a local Walgreens and took a drive in Emmett's truck around a residential neighborhood, where they parked and had intercourse. In the meantime, Candy's daughter had spotted her mother's car in the Walgreens parking lot. When she couldn't find Candy anywhere nearby, she called Rob to ask him where her mother was. Emmett was driving his mistress back to Walgreens when Rob called Candy. He grabbed her phone and threatened Rob, then challenged him to a fight outside the pharmacy. Rob was waiting in the parking lot when Emmett pulled in. Candy was the only witness, and she gave a multitude of conflicting statements to law enforcement about exactly what happened, but the confrontation ended with Rob fatally shooting Emmett. He then turned the gun on himself and attempted to take his own life, but survived. Rob Hall was convicted of second-degree murder in 2012 and received a 17.5-year prison sentence. His earliest possible parole date is in 2028. 3. Ralph Wald. Jonna Lynn Flores was in her early 40s when she left her on and off lover of several years, 31-year-old Walter Conley, and shacked up with his 70-year-old neighbor, Ralph Wald, in 2012. Flores and Wald married just a few months later, but she continued to see Conley right under her husband's nose, often inviting her illicit lover into their home in Brandon, Florida for late-night encounters. In early 2013, Wald woke up to get a glass of water and found Flores and Conley having intercourse in their living room. He fatally shot Conley and then dialed 911 to report what had happened. When officers arrived, Wald told them that he didn't recognize the victim and thought an intruder was assaulting his wife. Jonna told detectives that she had an affair with Conley because her husband was unable to perform, leaving her unsatisfied. Authorities found it hard to believe that Wold didn't recognize a man who had such an extensive past with Flores and who lived next door. They charged him with murder, and prosecutors accused him of shooting Conley in a jealous rage over the younger man's ability to satisfy his wife. Wold's lawyers argued that Wold acted appropriately under Florida's Stand Your Ground law, which determines a person's right to shoot someone when they feel threatened within their own home. A jury acquitted him, and when he and Flores were seen embracing and leaving the courthouse together, they confirmed to the press that they were working on their marriage. But the marriage appears to have taken another left turn in 2020, when Shawna was found dead on her couch with a gunshot wound to the chest. Wold is accused of shooting her with the same gun he killed Conley with and faces a manslaughter charge. Authorities have released few details about the circumstances surrounding the incident. 2. Jean Ann James. When Jean Ann James discovered that her friend was having an affair with her husband Derek in 1992, she decided the best way to outdo her competition was to eliminate it. She spent a few days thinking and planning, then called 40-year-old Gladys Wakabayashi and said that she was coming by with a gift. To avoid having her vehicle connected with what she was about to do, James parked several blocks away from Wakabayashi's home in Vancouver, British Columbia, and walked the rest of the way. When she arrived, she presented her friend with a necklace and offered to put it on for her. After securing the clasp, she reached around and cut Wakabayashi's throat with a box cutter. The victim's body was discovered later that day. Detectives suspected James of being the killer, but lacked enough evidence to connect her to the crime. Derek and Jean Ann James stayed together and years passed. In 2007, 15 years after the murder, police posed as gangsters and befriended Jean at a spa in what she thought was a chance encounter. Over the next 11 months, they led her to believe that they were members of a criminal organization and that they wanted her to work for them. In what's known in Canada as a Mr. Big Sting, Jean was led to believe that she had to meet with the gang's boss and confess to past misdeeds to remain in good standing with the organization. During the meeting, she gave a detailed description of the gruesome crime, which she'd never admitted to anyone else. It was enough to finally charge her with murder. The defense argued that Jean's confession was coerced and slammed the Mr. Big tactic as manipulative, but the court found the evidence compelling enough to convict her of first-degree murder in 2011. At the age of 72, she went to prison to serve out a life sentence. In 2015, a court denied her petition for private visits with her husband, deeming her an unmanageable risk to his safety. A report detailing the decision cites past allegations of domestic violence, as well as suspicions that James tampered with fellow inmates' food and tried to order contract killings against several fellow prisoners. 1. Devin Williams. On the morning of September 7, 2022, someone entered a Dublin, California home and shot 42-year-old Maria Tran and her husband Benison, execution style. While investigating the scene, officers overheard a witness mentioning a cop named Devin. License plate readers revealed that a vehicle owned by a 24-year-old Alameda County deputy named Devin Williams was in the area shortly after the murder. The 9mm shell casings found at the scene bore the same Spear 9mm inscription as the ammunition that the Alameda County Sheriff's Office uses, and two witnesses identified Williams as the suspect in a photographic lineup. Shortly after a judge issued a warrant, Williams surrendered to the California Highway Patrol in Fresno County, roughly 147 miles from the crime scene. According to a probable cause affidavit, the suspect's father told detectives that Williams and Maria Tran were dating. His mother told the media that her son had been blinded by love. After turning himself in, Williams said that he was initially unaware that Tran was married. Evidence suggests that instead of walking away when he found out, he became even more intent on keeping Maria in his life. Maria had called the police on Williams about a month earlier when he showed up at her house unannounced, demanding to talk about her husband. Hours before the murder, he'd shown up at her workplace. Investigators believe she was trying to end the affair. Williams faces 2 counts of murder and is awaiting trial behind bars at the same jail he used to work in. Thanks for watching. Would you rather get caught up in a love triangle at your job or date someone whose ex is constantly trying to re-enter the picture? Let us know in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. See you soon. Bye.